Hi, hello. So today I have another video for you guys about American comics. So if you have been watching the channel, you know that I used to be a really big comic book fan. Well, I still am a really big comic book fan, but while I read a lot more, I spend a lot more time reading prose novels lately. I still really love reading American comics, and I see a lot of booktube channels that recommend manga and Japanese comics, but I don't see really any who are talking about American comic stuff. You might see maybe a fantasy channel might recommend something like Sandman, but we don't. I'm not seeing people recommending more recent stuff either. So what I am going to be doing is over the coming weeks, I'm going to try and give recommendations for people who read the kind of books that I enjoy, and hopefully introduce people to some new comics. So today I have a really fantastic sci-fi series for you. So this is my first recommendation for science fiction readers, and that is The Omega Men by Tom King. Now the art is by, I'm going to read off of my notes here for a few things. So the art is by Barnaby Bagenda, and letters by, or colours by, actually, I don't know, let me check. Colours by Romulo Fajardo Jr. So I've probably butchered that name, I do apologise. Now, let's talk a little bit about the Omega Men. So it was released in 2015, ended in 2016. It was released monthly as issues, as pretty much all comics are. Now, the Omega Men is technically in the DC universe. So it is in continuity with DC Comics of the time, although there has been a reboot since then, so I don't know if it's actually still in continuity or not. But it's in DC continuity. It stars mostly extremely small minor characters from the DC canon, but there's one kind of maybe B tier DC hero that is kind of the main character. It's a hero that I've got quite a lot of affection for. It's Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern. So Kyle Rayner was introduced around the time that I started reading comics seriously in the 90s. And he was introduced as a kind of young, fresh character to replace the previous Lantern, Hal Jordan. So the story was basically that Hal Jordan was driven mad by the destruction of his home city, and he went mad. And Kyle Rayner picked up the Lantern Ring, and was actually the last Green Lantern, because Hal, when he goes mad, kills all of the others and turns evil. And Hal actually is probably Kyle's main antagonist during Kyle's run as the main Green Lantern. Eventually Hal becomes Green Lantern again, and he becomes good, and it's revealed that he went mad because of extenuating circumstances. But Kyle's a great character. He is an artist, so when he does Green Lantern stuff, he like creates really artistic and interesting things, and like pop culture references and stuff. It's very fun. You may be asking, what is a Green Lantern? I understand that. So, Green Lanterns are space cops. So, each Green Lantern is a member of a species, an alien species or human species, whatever, who has shown great willpower and lack of fear. And when they're identified, they're given a ring, and the ring allows them a few simple powers, but also the ability to make hard light constructs. So think about, like, if you're a sci-fi fan, you'll probably know Star Trek. The holodeck in Star Trek, those are hard light constructs. And Green Lanterns can basically do that, but green, and they don't need a holodeck, it's all projected out of the ring. So Kyle could, for example, make a sword that has the kind of same physical properties as a sword. He could make a car that, you know, can drive, all these sorts of things. But he also has the ability to fly, he can travel through space, he can, you know, do faster than light travel just as a single person in space. The rings aren't unlimited, they charge off of a battery, but the battery is... The power limit is only really there when it's useful for the story. It's not like Spider-Man running out of web, shooter web. It's much less frequently used than that. So, Kyle the Green Lantern is the main character of the Omega Men. But who are the Omega Men? So the Omega Men are a group of, they would say, freedom fighters. The antagonists of the series would say terrorists. It's a really interesting... and the Omega Men, they're led by a character called Primus, who's a pacifist, and he really struggles with the violence that they have to deal out in the book in order to fulfill their goals. So essentially, when Krypton, Superman's home planet, explodes, and I know this sounds like a lot of DC lore, this is literally, this and Green Lantern are the only two touchstones you'll need. So when Superman's home planet Krypton explodes, a business called the Citadel decides to capitalise on this and sell a specific kind of doohickey, or like, I think it's like a metal or something. My memory's a little fuzzy on this one. I did reread, but I mostly skim read it, I have to say. It's a really excellent comic, and I have reread it a couple of times already before, which is why I skim read. Now I'm thinking maybe I should have reread the whole thing, but c'est la vie. So they're selling this doohickey, which planets can install in their core, the core of the planet, which ostensibly will stop their planet from exploding like Krypton did. And so they've got a really captive market. Basically, no planet wants to explode. So they've got a big customer base, and the corporation becomes massively popular, massively successful. And the only place where the metal that is used to make this thing can be found is a place called the Vega system, which is quite a politically unstable region of space that Green Lanterns traditionally are not allowed to go to. Now the Citadel, once they realise they need this supply of metal and they need it kind of unrestrained, they take over and enslave the entire Vega system, and then they install in that system a religion where they believe in this kind of, I think it's a god called Alpha, and so that's why they're called the Omega Men, because they're kind of the opposite arc of that religion. So the Omega Men, basically, they act like terrorists. You know, they do one of the early plot points is that they execute somebody on television. They kill, they murder, they plant bombs. It's really, really interesting because Tom King, the writer, so to give you a little bit of context on Tom King, he writes a lot for DC. He's written one of the best Marvel comics in years, but he's only rewritten that one for Marvel. But he writes a lot for DC, and he's really one of the best writers in the business right now. And he does a lot of what are called maxi series, which is where they'll do like a 12-issue story, and then it's done, it's finished. So the Omega Men is one of those, so it's just 12 issues and done. The entire story's very self-contained. You only need, like I said, that very small amount of DC knowledge, and I've given it to you for the video. So the Omega Men is incredibly interesting because Tom King used to be a counter-terrorism officer for, I think, an analyst for the CIA. So he knows this subject inside and out. And I think that, we all know that, I say we all know, the US is involved in a lot of interactions with religious extremists and terrorists. And I think that Tom King might have been using the Omega Men to kind of work out some thoughts on that involvement that the US has. The Omega Men is genuinely a really, really interesting look at religious extremism. And while I actually might say it's close to grimdark, in kind of that fantasy genre, grimdark books. A lot of the story could be described as quite dark. I don't think it's unnecessarily dark, actually, and I would say that it does shy away from some of the more extreme story stuff you might see in a grimdark novel. Now, so yeah, Tom King was this intelligence analyst, counterterrorism analyst, and so he's taken the actual knowledge of how that works in our society and applied it to this science fiction setting. I think a lot of fans of science fiction, such as myself, really enjoy seeing those kind of allegories for our world today and how they can be analysed and turned on their head almost in science fiction, which is kind of what Tom King is doing here. It's a very morally grey comic, obviously, because the good guys are terrorists. And it's quite interesting because both the Citadel, the evil corporation / religion that are the antagonists, and the Omega Men get up to some stuff which is pretty questionable. And I think that Tom King works really hard to make sure that nobody is a very clear-cut good guy, nobody's that clear-cut bad guy. Even Kyle Rayner, the Green Lantern, who is this very heroic figure, also, he's kind of kidnapped by the Omega Men originally, and then after seeing what the Citadel have done to the Vega system, he gets a lot more involved, shall we say. I don't want to talk too much more about this because, again, I really just want you guys to read it. I think it's a fantastic comic. It's one of my favourite sci-fi comics ever. When I was thinking about sci-fi comics, the only reason that I didn't initially instantly go, I'm going to recommend the Omega Men, is honestly because I've reread it so many times I didn't want to reread it again. I'm trying to stay away from doing too many rereads, even in the comics world where a reread might take you 90 minutes to 2 hours to read these 12 issues. I just think that my time is usually better placed on reading new books for you guys. Well, for myself really, but also for the channel. This is probably, I think I would say this is my favourite sci-fi comic ever. There are some sci-fi comics as well that I could recommend that are much longer. So the original Guardians of the Galaxy stuff from Marvel that inspired the movies is really, really good. It does not have the comedic angle that the movies do, so the comics are very much more like a sci-fi epic. There's a few jokes cracked here and there, but it is not a comedy series, and most of the characters are played very seriously, especially Peter Quill's Star-Lord is really nothing like he's portrayed in the movies, although now in the comics he's very much like the Peter from the movies, so that's kind of fun. It's nice to see that backwards and forwards of ideas and story. So who should read the Omega Men? I think that we've talked here today about how it's quite a morally grey book, and in many respects that kind of aligns to me with a lot of the themes in the Greenbone saga, where they're kind of a mafia crime family as the good guys in that book. So in many ways, you're looking at, whilst the mafia and religious terrorists are not the same thing, and definitely one is probably more detrimental than the other, or has more potential for destruction than the other. I think that kind of you're rooting for people who might, should possibly be the antagonist in another different story. So yeah, I think I would definitely recommend for fans of the Greenbone saga. From what I hear of a lot of other stuff, like Malazan and Joe Abercrombie's work, the morally grey nature is definitely there. The one thing that I haven't actually mentioned, and that I probably should have earlier, is that the story is told non-linearly. So there's not, it's not kind of issue 1, first thing happens, issue 2, second thing happens. There's lots of flashing back and flashing forward. So if you're the kind of person who doesn't like non-linear stories, then probably stay away from this one. This one is a little more on the highbrow end of comics than The Last God was, that I reviewed and recommended previously. I'll talk a little bit more about Tom King's books in a future week. I think when we come to talking about thriller comics, his Rorschach comic is a fantastic one that I really love, which is kind of a sequel to the original Watchmen book. Watchmen could be a fantastic recommendation, although if you're interested in reading comics and you haven't given Watchmen a try, really it's something that everyone should just give a read. Once you've read it, definitely watch the HBO TV series from a couple of years ago, because that was a fantastic continuation of Watchmen that's actually very different to the Rorschach comic by Tom King. Other Tom King stuff that's fantastic, we're looking at things like Mr. Miracle and Strange Adventures. So both of those are actually quite heavy, kind of light to heavy sci-fi. So if you are a sci-fi fan and you enjoy the Omega Men, then definitely seek out, at the very least, Strange Adventures, which has a real heavy sci-fi themes. It's a sci-fi book. It's set, on another planet. The main character is a space adventurer, so definitely worth a read. So, I think that's pretty much all I can say about the Omega Man and about Tom King's work without massively spoiling it for you. And in many cases, I may have given some very light spoilers that I don't think will ruin your enjoyment. The Omega Men is currently free to read on DC Universe. I don't know if it's on Kindle Unlimited or Prime Reading. A lot of DC books are, but I think that often varies by country. So I don't want to say, yes, it's on there, and then all the Americans watching or all the French people watching then go, no, it's not available. So check it out. I will leave a link in the description down below, so you can check it out on Amazon yourself. And like I said, it is free on the DC Universe Infinite app. So if you have a subscription to that, which you might do if you're looking for a sci-fi comic recommendation, but if you have a subscription to that, then it is all free on there. So if you've got any sci-fi comics that you'd like to recommend, and I'd like to keep these to shorter series, so 12 issues or less, which is why we're not talking about books like Saga or Why the Last Man or Guardians of the Galaxy, for example, this week, because I do like to keep these recommendations to short stuff that is fairly out of continuity, so anyone can just pick it up and read it and then be happy they've seen the finished story. So if you've got sci-fi comic recommendations that fit that bill, then absolutely drop a comment down below. If there are any genres of comic that you'd like to see some recommendations for, then absolutely please shoot a comment down below and ask for recommendations, and I'll either reply directly to your comment, or I may even make a full video and reply. So if you want to direct the course of some of the content on this channel, here's your chance. Stay tuned to the channel for more comic recommendations that will be coming up in future weeks. And this month I'm reading through Stephen King's Holly Gibney books, or books starring Holly Gibney. So please keep an eye on the channel for the reviews for those books. and I will speak to you guys in the next one. Bye.